What's up, folks? Changing the oil today on the car. So I thought I would go over the process that I use when I do this, because I try to do it the same way every time. And because I do them relatively frequently, it helps to keep things efficient and minimize the chance that I make any oversights while I'm doing it. So at this point, well, I'll start off. I put the car up on 2x8s as opposed to jack stands. It's a lot faster for me, and I always know that the car is level, so that helps later on down the line. But the first thing that I'm going to end up doing is draining the oil out, of course, so that's pretty self-explanatory. It's a 7mm hex on the LN engineering drain plug that I use, which is here. So I go ahead and I pull that out and I drain the oil. One thing to be wary of, regardless deep sump or not deep sump, these engines hold a shitload of oil and it comes out very, very rapidly. That 16 quart AutoZone, I think, container is really good, but especially with the addition of the deep sump, I drilled a couple more drain holes in it to make sure that it drains effectively, because it will fill that top of that thing up and come real close to overflowing. So tip on that. So once the oil is draining, I take the opportunity and I change out the filter. So that is using that LN spin-on, which you can see there. So I change that out. I fill the new oil filter with oil pretty much as full as I can get it, and then I put it back on, making sure that that gasket was removed with the old filter, and then I just use a filter strap wrench to tighten that down. You can see we're still dripping here. This oil's been draining for, say, half hour or so. So I just do a bunch of other stuff while I'm waiting for the oil to fully drain. One additional note on my setup, I take off the sump plate or the skid plate just to make sure that I don't make a big mess out of oil. And while I'm here on the skid plate, one thing that folks may want to know, a lot of people that have put these LN engineering skid plates on have had issues with the with a lot of vibration coming into the cabin. It mounts on some hard points under the chassis. So one thing that I did was just went to Home Depot and got, I'm not sure what these are. I think I may have put them in another video. And I made these isolation pads. They're pretty much disposable. I just cut new ones out every so often when I take it off and put it back on. So it's an additional step to have to remove that skid plate, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. There's a hole to access the plug, and the filter is technically accessible. It makes a goddamn mess all inside the skid plate if I try to change the oil with it mounted on still. So I'll come over here. While the oil is draining, I take the opportunity to cut open and inspect the old oil filter. So what I use for this is just a simple oil filter cutter that I bought on Amazon. These things are kind of expensive for what they are. I think they're like 50 or 60 bucks, but it is what it is. Some folks mount them on walls or hard mount them. I don't do that. I kind of do my setup over another oil pan, and I throw a strap wrench on the other end of the filter, put the filter in there, and then I just use the strap wrench for leverage as I work the cutter. So here are the pieces that come out of my Napa 1042. We have the case, the element that holds the filter, some gasket, plug thing, and then you've got the actual filter element itself. So this looks beautiful after a couple hours of track use. So that's all good. So the next step that I'll go through is actually filling the motor with oil. My engine takes about 10.5 quarts with the deep sump, so I'll fill it with 10, which will register pretty high on the dipstick. I'll start the motor, let it circulate, and then I'll put another half quart in, and I'll let that sit for a couple of hours before I drive it. So that's my oil change process. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them down below.